Can Denmark defend itself today? For decades, Denmark has depended on NATO and, above all, the United States for its security. But with Trump back in the White House, US allies, Denmark included, can no longer take American protection for granted. This is a massive problem for Denmark. More than most NATO members, Denmark has relied on US security guarantees, spending little on defense while assuming that if war came, Washington would simply be there to help. So where does this leave Denmark now, and should you be worried about the security situation if you live in Denmark? That's what we are talking about today in this video. Denmark is a small country of just under 6 million people. It has no mountains, no deep forests, no vast swamps, nothing that naturally help in a defensive war, just open fields, coastline and a lot of water. It's an ideal place to live in peacetime, but not very easy to defend in a war. Denmark sits at a strategic location between the North Sea and the Baltic. Control of Denmark means control over the entrance to the Baltic Sea, something that has made Denmark historically valuable and at times vulnerable as well. If Denmark were invaded in a full-scale war like we have seen in Ukraine, the situation would likely be very dire for Denmark. Some defense analysts suggest that Denmark would last no more than just 2 weeks against a full Russian assault. Why is that? That's because Denmark's military hasn't been structured for home defense. It's been built for international missions, not repelling an invasion. Moreover, the mobilization for war in the population hasn't really happened, and the military defense infrastructure of the country is likely not in shape to withstand the pressure, quick losses, drone and missile bombardments that would be the reality in a modern war scenario. Denmark has around 9,000 active and professional military personnel and roughly 50,000 in the reserves. It has fewer than 50 operational tanks, a small navy and an air force that until recently still relied on aging F-16s and a few F-35s. It's a military built for peacekeeping and allied operations, not total war. Denmark has been invaded before, and the lessons from these invasions still shape the country's thinking today. The last major invasion happened in 1940 when Nazi Germany overran Denmark in just 6 hours. But the quick defeat wasn't because Denmark fought and lost on the battlefield, it was more because Denmark barely fought at all. And why was that? Well, because Denmark had learned from earlier experiences, a true disaster that happened in 1864. In 1864, Denmark went to war with Prussia and Austria over control of Schleswig-Holstein, which are two areas in the south of Denmark and north of Germany. The result was that Denmark was crushed simply. It lost 1/3 of its land and tens of thousands of lives. After that war, Denmark realized something. Fighting alone was pointless as the country is almost undefendable. If Denmark was to survive, it needed alliances, and this belief has shaped Danish defense and foreign policy ever since. Briefly coming back to 1940, that's simply why the Danish army put down its weapons and surrendered to the German army in just 6 hours, because the threat of Luftwaffe bombing Copenhagen would just be too much to bear and would require too many lost lives for the Danish population. After World War II and Danish liberation, Denmark had to make a choice: stay neutral or find protection. In 1949, it became a founding member of NATO, guaranteeing that if Denmark was attacked, the US and its allies would come to its aid. For Denmark, NATO was a perfect deal. The best ally for a small country is a powerful nation that is far away. The US fit that role perfectly. And Denmark had something to offer in return: Greenland. Greenland, a Danish territory, is home to the Pituffik Space Base, a crucial US military installation for missile defense and Arctic surveillance. This has made Denmark an important player in US defense strategy, ensuring American protection in return for Danish protection. And this setup allowed Denmark to keep its military spending low throughout the 70s and 80s. Denmark, however, has participated very actively in UN peacekeeping, notably in the Balkan Wars in the 90s. After 9/11, Denmark embarked on a very pro-US foreign policy, participating in US-led allied operations in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. But now with Trump's return, all of that could be changed, as Trump has severely undermined the trust in the US in just a 2-month period. Donald Trump has made it clear the US will no longer protect allies who don't pay their share for defense.
Well, I've said that to them. I said, if you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. I said that 7 years ago. I said, if you're not going to pay your bills, we're not going to defend you.
Which might be a fair point, but that is not all he has said. And Denmark has been one of the countries he has singled out before. He even did not rule out taking Greenland with force. Now Trump's stance has raised serious concerns in Copenhagen. If Denmark can't count on the US, who can? And the answer is really complicated for Denmark to find. Right now, Denmark's main short-term security strategy is simple: keep Russia bogged down in Ukraine. That's why Denmark has been one of the most aggressive NATO countries in supplying Ukraine with weapons. In fact, Denmark has donated 4 times more main battle tanks to Ukraine than the United States alone. Denmark has also sent nearly all of its artillery and half of its operational F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. What's the logic of doing so? Well, if Russia stays busy in Ukraine, it won't come for anyone else, right? But long term, Denmark is and needs to look for new options. One key strategy is strengthening military ties with other European countries, particularly the Nordic countries, Poland and the Baltic countries, which to Denmark is the first line of defense against Russia after Ukraine. Russia would need to go through these countries first before reaching Danish shores. These countries have a combined economic footprint larger than Russia, and with Russia severely weakened in Ukraine, these countries can mount a significant challenge to Russia even in the long run. Another route is working within the European Union's new military initiatives. Germany alone has suggested committing 500 billion to its defense buildup. And the EU's new ReArm initiative, worth 800 billion euros, is meant to transform European defense in the coming years. If these efforts succeed, Denmark could finally have a regional security architecture strong enough to replace the old reliance on the US. On top of that, the French nuclear deterrence might be extended to the rest of Europe as well. Question then is if Denmark is willing to house nuclear weapons. That is to be seen. So, can Denmark defend itself? Right now, not really if we're looking at a full-scale invasion like we saw in the Ukraine. Without NATO and the US, Denmark would be extremely vulnerable in a direct attack. Short term, Denmark is betting that supporting Ukraine keeps Russia too busy to be a threat. Long term, Denmark is scrambling to build up European defense cooperation and modernize and beef up its own military capabilities. But whether these efforts succeed before the next crisis, that's still an open question. Personally, I don't think Russia or the US will attack Denmark or Greenland, so the chances of a military invasion are very low. However, I believe we are vulnerable to cyber attacks on our strategic infrastructure, as well as the disinformation campaigns from both Russia and the US. This can be in relation to elections like the one happening in Greenland right now, or more general propaganda and distortion of reality, which is taking place very actively from both the US government as well as Russia. But what do you think? Is Denmark doing enough? Should it invest more in its own military? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one.